Welcome to the Play Create podcast. I'm Kirsten Gunnerud.
And I'm Jill Johnson.
This is a place to explore play and creativity.
It is, and this is where we come together and we play and create forward, which means that we give momentum to our ideas and our thoughts that have been kind of keeping us up every night.
Yeah, in every aspect of life, work, parenting, you name it, there's no place we won't go and explore.
And when it gets down to it, we just want to have fun.
We love fun. So it is the beginning of March.
Woo!
And I am so excited because this is kind of the beginning of spring. When is the equinox? Is that March?
The 20-something
Yes.
of March. 21st, maybe?
Okay, cool. So spring, things starting, all those seeds that were planted in the fall, starting to kind of get ready to emerge.
Yeah.
And so we're going to focus March and April on creativity, and which for some of our listeners, isn't that what this whole podcast is about? Well, yes.
Yes.
But we're going to focus like really deeply on creativity unto itself and how powerful it is and the science behind it and why it works and people who are using it in their work, their life, their parenting, whatever it might be, and play with that.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is that people sometimes think it's just art. And creativity is really how we live and how we come to each day and what we bring with it. Yes. And so when you talk about it, I think about, like, especially during spring, we're incubating through the winter where things are coming up and then they come to the surface and then we start to see which fruits are really starting to bloom and which ones we can just let go of. Yeah. And I think being agile in that, because creativity makes you an agile creature where you're trying things out and you're able to pivot and see what if this idea might work a little bit better, or stick with it and see where it comes all the way through. So it's really about the process that we get really excited about, because when we're in creativity, we're not so much in the outcome. Yeah. We get outcomes. But when we're in it, we're in the process of it, which is really where the richness is.
And when we focus on the process instead of the outcome, ironically, the outcomes usually end up better.
Yep.
Because we're in the process and we're letting things unfold instead of, as we've talked about before, being so focused on, this is the way to do it. Because often that process takes us into another territory, not even another territory, but in another path that brings us to even better things than we could have imagined for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and I think the unfolding is like the big thing, because there's things that don't go right at all. Creativity is really about being really messy and being able to change lanes when things don't turn out the way we want them to. And a lot of times, not all the time, but I'd say a majority of the time, you find something out in that moment of the mess. And sometimes it might take a little hindsight, but a lot of times in that moment, you get an aha, like, holy moly, I had no idea that this could turn this way. I didn't even know if I mixed these two mediums accidentally together that they would yield this. Some of the greatest art pieces have been from those moments where people, and not to get all Bob Rossian on everyone, but like the happy accidents, like when things just get a little out of our control. And that's what creativity is. We're letting go of control.
And that's how Post-its were made. That's how, like, so many, not just in the art world, but so many
Velcro.
Innovations. And, NASA has brought so many new things that most of which we don't even know came from their accidents or the things that worked or whatever it might be. And so, again, creativity is so much more than art. Yeah. It's how we live our day. It's how we approach it. It's
how we solve things. Yes. And seeing it, like, I think about, you brought this magazine in of all these different companies and how they use creativity in their minutia. And so when you hear Pixar, you're like, well, of course they're creative. Yeah. But they have to create a culture that allows creativity. So we might be really creative beings, but we might not be accessing it. I know that I have lots of things at home, but am I really being creative all the time? No, I could do other things. And so I think what we're really excited about is just challenging ourselves, daring ourselves to use creativity, to look at how we answer things. And a lot of that sometimes comes back to that idea of gratitude, because if we start to look around and take stock for what's right in front of us and what we have right here, then we're able to use it. If we're always pining and comparing, art is one of those things that's really can get people stuck in the mud, because you start to look around and you're like, well, they've been doing this forever, or that's a prodigy, or this person's just good at this. I call it the American Idol syndrome. Like, they don't see it. They don't see all the hard work that went in. They only see when they go home weak or whatever. But just, we need to also know that it is a process, and, who cares what it turns out. But a lot of times it's going to help you kind of leapfrog to another adventure that you didn't expect.
Totally. Creativity is a muscle, I think, right? Yeah. And if we don't use it, if we aren't practicing with it, if we aren't giving it an opportunity to learn and grow and get stronger, it can't do its best work for us.
Yep.
So how can we start to work with that more? And one of the things I'll have some of my clients do sometimes is, I don't care what it is, but at night, and I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but to have just a little notebook, journal, sketchbook by their bed and just do a little doodle. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be anything more than whatever it wants to be, a squiggly line, a face, maybe you want to sketch something bigger, I don't care. Mm-hmm. But just that one simple act can have powerful results. Yes. And that's just kind of that first walking around the block, right, at home, instead of walking a couple miles. The first little step, or running a marathon.
Going straight for the ultra.
Yep. And we're going to have Amanda on, who's run ultra marathons, who's done the Mongolian Derby on a horse, and crazy awesome things. But just start using that muscle.
Yeah. Well, and I think you can also tell when you're starting to push in your creative muscle is when your ego shows up. And the way it will show up is, well, this isn't making any money, or this isn't something that's going to really produce a result. Oh, I just sketched something great. I just used another journal and piece of paper, and that's not. It's the stuff, you get a little voice that really is like the naysayer of the critic. They talk about the inner critic in all art circles. And that's the one you have to just lean up and be like, okay, cool, I hear you. Yeah. But I'm just going to do it anyway. I'm just going to try this and just see what happens. Or it's the numbing. Like, instead of sitting down and trying something, you go to whatever it is that you numb with. I mean, maybe it's wine. Maybe it's TV. Maybe I know that I'm numbing a little is because I sometimes don't sleep well. So if I start reading a new book, I'll have to finish it in a night. It's bad. So I'll read books that I already know, just because then I know what's going to happen. I can just kind of fall asleep with it. But then I'm like, wait, is this kind of another numbing thing? So just notice the voice, what you turn to not show up, and just kind of look at it. It doesn't mean that you have to change it all or give it all up or go on this deep cleanse. It just means a noticing, which we always talk about here. I think we have all these favorite words. We should start a drinking game where every time we say notice, creativity, play, pause, people can drink. I mean, we could become that's
an awesome way to play
a really great college game at some point. But I think that's the big thing. It's just notice those things, because I think the creative muscle, we get so used to what we see, and we compare it to all those great works around us. But it's just those little steps that will lead to other things.
You know what mine is? What I notice, my way of getting in my own way? I have a massive workshop filled with art supplies. I have 2 different areas of my house filled with art supplies. Yep. You've seen it.
Yep.
And
it's massive.
Yes. And despite that, no matter what it is that I'm creating, somehow I don't have quite the right thing that I need.
Yeah.
And so I either have to find it or I have to go buy it, and that's my way of distracting myself often
But
from
think
what
of
I really
all
want to do.
the cool pens you have now.
Yes,
I mean,
do.
you have new pens every time we meet, so it's pretty awesome.
And I even have clients now, like these ones came from a client who loved my
sweet.
pens and shared her favorite pens, and I adore these too. So one of my challenges to myself lately has been to work with what I have, right?
Yeah.
To use everything, but to use what's already on the table.
Yep.
And so even if it isn't the thing I think I need or that I want, it's playing with what's right there and seeing what that wants to turn into.
Yep.
And once I let go of it having to be a certain way and just work with what I have, it's actually been really, really fun. But it took me a long time to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But noticing it, I don't think I noticed it before,
Yep.
right? I mean, yes, I noticed I always had to go to Michael's or I always had to go here, order from there. But I wasn't conscious that that was my way of delaying or avoiding that fear that comes with creativity.
Well, and yeah, it always looks shinier outside of us,
Yeah.
you know? So a good example is like with this business that I'm in, you know, a lot of the stuff that I kept thinking that it had to be so different and that there was something shinier and better. And really it's just hunkering down with what is right there, because you'll go crazy looking out and you'll just, it's like, you know, that impulse that you think you need to buy it right now. It's that thing that, oh, I just need to build this one more thing or do this one more thing. I think your great thing is like when you're building your website, which is so beautiful. And then you're like, well, wait, if we have one more thing here, I'm like, dude, that's like a legit site. Get that sucker going, you know. Also going with the whole idea. I used to cringe when people talked about the good enough philosophy.
Yeah.
Like the good enough mother, and there's all these things in psychological circles, but there is something to be said about the good enough.
There is.
Because you're never going to know what really is needed until you get the good enough out there and then you start tweaking it.
Yeah.
If we strive for perfection, then we're never doing it.
Yep.
We're watching on the sidelines, we're fiddling, we're never stepping in it. And the minute we step in, I know like Brene Brown always brings up that, I think it's Winston Churchill's quote of like, it's the ones that are in the middle of the arena, not the ones on the side telling them how to do it, you know. So we need to step in.
Yes.
And that's what we're really asking about. Alchemy is about taking what's there and stepping into it and seeing how it changes and seeing what the golden strands or whatever it is comes through it, versus thinking that if we just owned more, did more, had more, that it would lead us to all these riches.
And you're right. Alchemy is about the elements that you have to work with, the combination of those, and together the transformation that the whole is so much better than any of the individual parts,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so I hadn't thought about that, but that's what, using what I have instead of thinking I need to go find something else, that's what's been so powerful about that.
Yep.
Is that creates magic, that creates something awesome. And if I get out of my head of how I think it has to be and use what I already have there, I'm witnessing that transformation happening right there.
Well, and that's where we get all excited about magic.
Yes.
Because the magic is in that transformation. It's in that moment. Like, you know, here we are in a paint and sip studio, and it's fun art. It's not fine art, but there is an alchemy that happens when somebody comes in with a blank canvas, has never, ever, ever painted, or just thinks that they're not there, and then transforms something.
Yes.
It transmutes into something else. Yes. And that's that process. And you can see that moment of like, oh, I can do this. It's, you know, if you're into a sport or anything out there where it just transforms you for a moment, that's the magic of it. That's the alchemy.
Yes. If you like this podcast, don't forget to subscribe.
And definitely share it with all your friends.
Heck yeah, we can all use more play and creativity in our lives.
Yes, especially with our friends.
Yes. And check us out on social media. We're at Rocket Trike Studios. We'd love to have you join us there.